Hello and welcome to another episode of the Federal Church Presents Better Than Bloomberg. Continuing our coverage of the financial system collapse here. Here is take note of the desperation of the criminal scum, by the way. Not only the stupid filth who they're entitled to be spying on me for free, but the garbage of fucking international little headery, as we call them. As not only their financial system collapsed, but their country existence is collapsing. And here we're covering the banking failure. This is actually something from back in June 10th, 2 months ago, because the little shits kept telling all the useful idiots to keep medicating me into sedation because they don't like what they hear when they spy on. Oh, they can drop dead. But and they did it again today too, by the way. I had them document this for the lawsuit they're going to get for it. It's called the lawsuit. And for some reason, the fools, the insane, the brainwashed of social media still think, oh, look, he needs to be medicated. Let's just put it in a turkey sandwich we give to him. Fucking idiot comments. Again, it's nothing but a fucking goddamn digital gulag. And just like this, they'll steal my IP. They think they'll tell people who I spend my time with, just like now. It's some of the most disgusting filth again around me. One example, I guess. But for fucking 11 goddamn years, I thought they'd play a digital gulag, tell me who I spend my time with, propagandize their shit agenda, and while spying on me too. If I don't think what they want, they think they have an excuse to be committing their fucking crimes, just like this shit. Shit that shouldn't even be in this country. You know why? Because there's no birthright citizenship, that's why. And these fucking shit still think that they're gonna run their little Talmudic fucking goddamn digital fucking version of little Stasi type fucking insanity. Have always somebody spying on you in the public. Always some shit little informant there with their phone spying on you with the router vision and their cameras and whatnot. And never is it anybody that I should be having no problem having around me. And just like I said, I don't know what the fuck the entire world has been fucking watching. But they seem to have thought this was a great thing. And stupidly enough, too, thinking that I would be working in some little head movie industry. Why the fuck would I do that? They can pay me for all my stolen IP. And then, of course, there's a proletariat, which I can't fucking stand most. These are people with no education who think they're simply entitled to fucking work of other people. And they don't even know what that work is. They can't even put a fucking value on it. They can't even tell you what it is or what it's worth. But they should get my fucking Nobel Prize winning work. You know, kind of like Rickard Stoll, by the way, I'm putting his books right there, right? And that in addition to doing some fucking bullshit I have no interest in doing, like fucking sitting in a snorkel shop, I should be fixing their shit economy instead of imploding it. Especially when they conspired to make sure that I have no economic interest in it. Well, that's not going to happen. And we're going to watch their banking system implode. And this is actually a write-up by Rickards. It's not by me. But I guess he gets it as well. The fools, they just like to believe whatever they want. Oh, look, everything's fine. Nothing collapsed yet. I'm just going to put my money in the bank like a moron. I'm sure you recall the banking crisis of March to May 2023. Began with the collapse of the little-known Silvergate Bank on March 8th. This was, and again, it should have been obvious to anybody who fucking knows anything about commercial banking and how it fucking operates. For some reason, it wasn't obvious to these scumbags. But when your entire capital base is, for example, sovereign debt like US toiletries or any other form of fucking goddamn debt, and interest rates are going up, not to mention inflation, which will force those interest rates up, even if the central banks cut their rates. Well, you should pretty much realize your banks are fucking insolvent. This is textbook stuff. Yet they didn't know the textbook, so they wouldn't understand the real life version of it. And their fat fucking idiots thought that they had an excuse to be throwing a little fit in my shop too, thinking that I existed to sell snorkels, for example. I don't know who the fuck thought that was a good idea and then managed to spin it like it was a great thing to the fucking entire world. I should be running my fucking hedge fund with no fucking problem. If you thought you were doing me a fucking favor having me sit in a fucking snorkel shop, well, you're probably a fucking idiot. And you deserve what you're getting. Getting your shit jobs like going to. So this was followed the next day by the collapse of the much larger Silicon Valley Bank on March 9th. Silicon Valley Bank had over 120 billion in uninsured deposits. Bank deposits over 250,000 each are not covered by FDIC insurance. Those depositors stood to lose all their money over the insured amount. This would have led to the collapse of hundreds of startup tech businesses in Silicon Valley that had placed their working capital on deposit at SVB. There were also much larger businesses such as Cisco and at least one large cryptocurrency exchange that had billions of dollars on deposit there. Not the brightest idea. Fucking, the whole premise of that was to not be in that fucking idiot banking system, too. I have no idea what they were thinking. Those businesses would have taken huge write-downs based on the size of their uninsured deposits. On March 9th, the FDIC said that indeed the excess deposits were uninsured, and depositors would get receivership certificates of uncertain value and zero liquidity instead. By March 11th, the FDIC reversed course and said all deposits would be insured. The Federal Reserve intervened and said they would take any U.S. Treasury securities from member banks in exchange for par value, cash, even if the bonds were only worth 80% of par, which most were. Then they got the mother of all bailouts that Sunday night. They also closed Signature Bank, a New York-based bank with crypto links. The damage wasn't done. On March 19th, the Swiss National Bank forced a merger of UBS and Credit Suisse, one of the largest banks in the world. Credit Suisse was on the edge of insolvency. Finally, on May 1st, First Republic Bank, with over $225 billion in assets, was ordered closed by the government and sold to JP Morgan. It was the mother of all bailouts and seemed to leave stock market investors unfazed. Zimbabwe. A lot of worthless cash sloshing around. That's where they put it. The issue was and is once you've guaranteed every deposit and agreed to finance every bond at par value, what's left in your bag of tricks? What can you do in the next crisis that you haven't already done except nationalize the banks? And more Zimbabwe. After 5 bank failures in 2 months and a $1 trillion bailout by the government, the crisis seemed over. But that was false comfort. I wrote at the time that the crisis wasn't over, it was just halftime. Investors are relaxed because they believe the banking crisis is over. That was a huge mistake. History shows that major financial crises unfold in stages and have a quiet period between the initial stage and the critical stage. And again, this was 2 months ago. This was back in June. And it was only recently that you see for example, the currency collapse in Japan and the banking system collapse in Japan too. Wherein even if the Japanese central bank intervenes, that doesn't fix the fact that those Japanese or the Japanese banks, like an agricultural bank, not the central bank, but an agricultural bank or a conglomerate like Mitsubishi Financial Group, that these aren't insolvent. They still are. And it doesn't matter if they lower rates, because with the money that they printed, the inflation will of course force rates up and make those debt, make any debt worth less. And slow motion crisis turns real time. This happened in 1994 when the spring bond market massacre seemed contained in the summer only to explode into the Mexican tequila crisis in December. And you saw the Mexican currency start to implode as well. You can expect that to happen again this time around too. It happened in 1997-98 when the Asian financial crisis calmed down in the winter of 1998, only to explode into the Russia LTCM crisis the following August and September. It happened during the global financial crisis when the original distress in August 2007 that seemed contained was followed by the failures of Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Lehman Brothers from March to September 2008. The average duration of these financial crises is about 20 months. This new crisis began 15 months ago. Could have 5 more months to run, if not longer. And again, this was 2 months ago that I just had up in one of my tabs on my computer that I planned to make a video about. But yet the little heads, the little scumbags, told the useful idiots to keep medicating me. And within those 2 months, you already start to see there are very many banks that are imploding. And he's saying 5 months, but in less than 2 months, we already had the Norwegian, Mitsubishi's. We have plenty in the United States too, and I'm sure there are plenty in Europe, especially in the pig section. So that's just kind of funny that he writes that, or wrote that 2 months ago. On the other hand, this crisis could reach the acute stage faster, which is what's happening now. That's because of technology that makes a bank run move at the speed of light. With an iPhone, you can initiate a billion-dollar wire transfer from a failing bank while you're waiting in line at McDonald's. No need to line up around the block in the rain waiting your turn. And that's essentially what you saw with that fat bitch too, losing her fucking mind while spying on me illegally too. I'm moving money around on my fucking phone because I know the banks are gonna fail. And some stupid bitch thinks she's doing me a favor by fucking goddamn fucking watching me work in a snorkel shop, by the way. And then thinks I exist to do anything but sell her a snorkel when she pays me to do nothing else. And that's the idiocy of communism as well. And this is the failure of communism. In other words, the second stage of the crisis could erupt in even more dramatic fashion sooner than later. The slow motion crisis can become a very real-time crisis very quickly. The dollar itself is at stake. Again, he wrote this 2 months ago. This was before the little implosion in Japan that you saw in the last about week or so. And they were all celebrating. Oh, look, the market is back to what it was. It wasn't, not in real terms. Because they printed shitloads of dollars to fucking try and save it. So you saw the dollar implode. You saw other things like gold and crypto fucking move up too. And it's because, no, in real terms, they didn't save anything. They just printed more money and tried to paper over it just to make everybody poor. In addition, the regulatory response is faster because they've seen this movie before. That begs the question of whether regulators are out of bullets because they've already guaranteed almost everything, so they don't have more rapids to pull out of the hat. This could be the crisis where the panic moves from the banks to the dollar itself. If savers lose confidence in the Fed, which is insolvent, not only will the banks collapse, but the dollar will collapse also. Yeah, especially when trillions more of it, which is what they did recently. This was written a couple months ago. At that point, the only solution is gold bullion, which again moved up back then, even with their naked shorts trying to manipulate market prices. It's also important to distinguish between individual bank failures and a systemic banking crisis. When individual banks fail, the depositors and creditors are usually protected, but stockholders can get wiped out. In a systemic banking crisis, kind of like you see in Japan and Asia, and it's spread to shitholes like Mexico, and especially the United States, where you saw, well, what did they try to blame on it? Not the dipshit trade, but the carry trade. Well, that affects them too. The contagion goes from bank to bank quickly, and the entire system has to be rescued with some combination of blanket deposit guarantees and unlimited QE. That's their money printing that they used to try to print their way out of their little mess they had basically last week. But if you look at it closely, in real terms, they did not recover. and they made everybody poor at the same time. In the worst case, you have to shut the banks, which FDR did in 1933, or nationalize them, which some countries have done from time to time. They've also done this in the last decade, when, with nothing even going on in the financial system, some banks had to be shuttered and depositors had to have a haircut. Is stage two here? Either a single bank, especially in Europe, either a single bank failure or systemic crisis could happen at any moment. The actual trigger is a bit mysterious. Well, but idiotic money printing, kind of like we saw in the last few weeks. Again, he wrote this 2 months ago, and mostly psychological because the fundamental problems have been there all along. Well, it seems that the quiet period is over and we are entering stage two of the banking meltdown. According to the latest data from the FDIC, many banks could be at risk of failure as unrealized losses reach $517 billion in the first quarter of 2024, up from $478 billion in the last quarter of 2023. 40 banks with over $1 billion in assets have already reported unrealized losses higher than 50% of their equity capital, where 200 smaller banks with lesser assets have issued the same reports. Bottom line is, stage two of the crisis is here, and the effects will be devastating to financial institutions and the stock market as a whole. Now, you got to see that with that little hiccup in Japan, but it's not only Japan. We may not be able to prevent the crisis, but we can see it coming and prepare accordingly to preserve our wealth. His solution is to get gold, and we'll see you through the storm. And that probably won't be it, because it's a pretty collapse. And that's it for that one.